Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us. This is Michael Ellis. I'm the publisher of Rural Lifestyle Dealer magazine. Welcome to another webinar event presented by Rural Lifestyle Dealer. Today's webinar is brought to you and all of our registrants courtesy of Charter Software, the provider of Aspen Business Systems. Today's presenter, Bob Clements, will share specific techniques he shares in his sales boot camps on how to qualify, negotiate, and close more sales. Now, Bob is recognized as the premier management consultant for the outdoor power equipment, agriculture, and power sports dealerships in North America. Before we turn everything over to Bob, I have a couple of housekeeping items. On your screen, there's an arrow in an orange box. You can click on the arrow and choose question to open up a question field, and that will allow you to submit questions at any time during the presentation. Time permitting, we're going to look to answer as many of the questions submitted as we possibly can following the presentation. But rest assured, if we don't get to all of them, we're going to send all of the questions submitted home with Bob and he can answer them. We'll post the answers up on our website along with the archived video replay of the webinar, so you can always come back and review it if you'd like to. If for any reason your internet connection or our connection should fail at some point during the presentation and it looks like the webinar has been interrupted, circle back to the email you received earlier telling you how to join the webinar, and you should be able to re-enter that way. With that, we are ready to roll. Thanks again to everybody for joining us. We will now turn everything over to Bob. Good morning, Bob.
Good morning, Michael. Cole, thanks so much. I'm excited to have an opportunity to do a webinar again. This is one that is one of my favorite areas. I want to thank Charter Software also. They're one of our favorite software companies. Ann and her team, I was really excited to see them wanting to be a sponsor for this, and I appreciate that. And a lot of what we're going to talk about today, or for this hour as we go through, we're going to talk about customer relation management aspects of sales as a part of negotiating and closing, and Charter's got a real robust part for that. So I appreciate them being on board, and I'm excited to have them sponsoring the webinar. As Michael said, if you have questions, we will be answering questions at the end. But if you have questions and we do run out of time, just make sure that you get those to Cole or Michael. They'll come to me, and I'll make sure that we get them answered, and we'll get them posted for you folks too. A lot of you know me from work I've done primarily in dealerships in the service and parts department, and most of you are not aware of the fact that I actually started my company 30 years ago, so we're in our 30th year now. But I started it as a sales training company. I was born and raised on a dairy farm in northwest Missouri. Spent 18 years of my life with my head next to a Holstein cow. Got out of farming as quick as I could when I graduated from high school, went to college, and ultimately circled back around and got into sales as a career, and then had an opportunity to do work with a sales training company who taught me how to sell, and through a lot of different circumstances took over one of their operations in Minnesota. And so I started my company as a sales training company. So there's nothing that I have more passion for. And I love service and parts departments, but I love sales. Sales is who I am, and there's nothing that probably frustrates me more when I'm consulting in dealerships than bad salespeople. So it's kind of fun to be able to do this, because I think a lot of times in salespeople really have never just been taught how to sell. I know a lot of dealers, they hire people that they think will be good salespeople because they've got good personalities, or they've got the quote-unquote gift of gab, which is a curse, not a blessing, as a salesperson. And so they bring them in and they say, well, now just go sell. And a lot of sales aren't made because the salespeople have never really been trained how to sell. Selling is a journey, it's a process, it's not an event. And so what I want to do as we go through this time this morning is to walk you through some of the basics of selling, why people buy, and how we ultimately can transition ourselves into doing a better job of negotiating and ultimately closing more sales, because that's what it's about. It's not about being in front of lots of people. It's about getting sales and creating sales. And as I work with the dealerships that we consult with and work with manufacturers, it really kind of blows my mind how little accountability most dealers have to their salespeople. They're monitoring their activity and monitoring the flow and the investment that they're making in marketing to make sure that all the investment they're making in creating sales are not being followed through by the salespeople or by the dealership themselves. So we're going to talk about several different things as we go through here. Negotiating and closing is the last part of the selling process. There's a lot of steps that lead up to that, and if you do the initial steps correctly, negotiating and closing is a relatively simple process. As I tell my salespeople that I train, there's absolutely no reason as a salesperson that if somebody walks into your dealership that you shouldn't be closing 40% plus of all the qualified people that walk into your dealership. And so that's what I want to talk about here is how do we increase our sales by doing the things in the beginning better so that ultimately when we get to the point where we are negotiating and we are getting ready to close a sale, everything kind of falls into place for us. So it's not this battle that we have to have. So let's start off with, to me, the most important part of selling. When I got into sales over 30 years ago, I didn't understand a lot about selling. I thought sales had a lot to do with me explaining to people the products that I represented at that point. And as I learned more and more about sales and became more and more experienced as a salesperson, I realized that the biggest mistake I was making as a salesperson was I didn't understand the basic truth about people. The basic truth about people is that people are not logical. When I was selling, and I'm sure you guys have gone through this before yourself, I tended to focus on what the manufacturers told me to focus on. Here's what we build. Here's why it's better. This is what you need to share with people. It's kind of that concept of feature benefit selling. And the reality of it is not every feature on a piece of equipment you sell really has a benefit to a customer. But I find that a lot of salespeople spend their time talking about stuff that really doesn't matter, thinking that if I share with you enough things that are logically make sense to you, if I inundate you with logic, with the understanding of, well, the manufacturer built this because of this, and they built this because of this, and they built this because of this, and focus on all the engineering aspects of your product, if I just do that enough, you will finally just succumb to me and say, okay, I've had enough, here's my money, take it. And the reality of it is that's not how it happens, because people are not logical, they're emotional. And the biggest thing that I learned as a young salesperson myself is that if I'm going to do a better job selling, I have to get people more emotionally involved in what I'm selling, not logically involved, but emotionally involved. And a lot of that goes back to me, because I found as a salesperson, the more excited I was about the product that I sold, the easier it was for me to get people excited about what I was excited about. And I find that when people are excited, they tend to want to give you their money. And so the mistake that I find a lot of salespeople make is that you're not excited about what you sell. I see a lot of young salespeople. I just did a sales boot camp a few months back, and there were a lot of young salespeople in it, and they were like, well, we're young, we don't have a lot of experience. I said, sales doesn't have anything to do with experience. It has to do with your passion and your emotion as a salesperson. There's a lot of experienced salespeople that are not passionate about what they do anymore, and so they're not really salespeople. They're just order takers. They have people that come in, they give them cash, and they are all whoop-de-doo thinking that they're this great salesperson. They didn't do anything to sell. The person likes the dealership. The person likes the manufacturer. They had cash in their hand, and all the salesperson does was take it from them. That's not selling. I tell people selling is taking somebody that's not sure they want something and taking them down this path, guiding them down this taking them on this journey that they're passionate and they're excited about and they're emotional about. And they're emotional about it because you're emotional and excited about it too. So I'm going to tell you, as a salesperson myself, speaking to salespeople, you got to get excited about what you're selling. If you're excited, if you're passionate, sales start to work better for you and sales start to happen for you. Right? And that's one of the most important things, I think, as a salesperson. I find it's easy to close sales when people are excited and passionate about what you've just shown them. It's hard to close sales when you weren't excited about it either. You're talking to somebody about a product and you're saying, well, you know, we're really excited about this new tractor, this mower, this motorcycle, this ATV, I don't care what it is. If you sound like you're not excited, even though you're saying things that are words that seem to make you feel like you're excited, if you don't sound excited, if you don't look excited, if you don't look passionate, people aren't going to buy it. So the most important thing to me in the very beginning is understand a basic truth. It's not about logic, it's about emotion. The engineers from all these manufacturers spend a lot of time engineering the products that they do, so they have these wonderful features on them. But I'm going to tell you right up front, most people don't care. There's only 2 or 3 things they really care about. They don't care about the other 100. And if you think you're going to do better in sales by learning more about your product so that you can tell them about the 100 different things that make your product unique and different, your equipment unique and different, you're mistaken. That's not what it's all about. Most important thing to understand in sales that I learned was I was the product, not my equipment. And I think that's one of the key things that I would encourage you to understand, that you become the product that people buy. It's not the equipment that you sell. If you're selling utility or compact tractors, combines, swathers, if you're selling ATVs, UTVs, RTVs, if you're selling zero-turn mowers, it's not what they're buying. You're missing the whole point here. They've already made a decision when they come into your dealership that they are interested in buying a tractor or an RTV or a motorcycle or whatever it is that you sell. They've already made the decision to do that. So it's not that they're looking to buy the product. In my mind, as a professional salesperson, they're looking for who they're going to buy that product from. So it's not the product anymore that I have to sell. It's me. I'm the product. And so I tell salespeople that I train, you've got to ask yourself a question. It doesn't make any difference what manufacturer you represent. The question you have to ask yourself is, am I a good product? Am I worth paying more for? Because we're going to talk about this in just a moment, and a lot of people talk about price, and I know in the utility and compact market right now, you got the titans out there are giving away stuff like it's a carnival at a school. They're giving away all this extra extended warranties and all of this stuff like this, and they're doing it because their products, in my mind, don't have enough differentiation, or at least their dealerships don't have enough ability to go out and really sell themselves as a part of it. And so you have to understand that you're the product that people buy. So the question that you should be asking yourself every morning when you come in, and you shouldn't be bitching and moaning and complaining about the manufacturers. You should be saying, am I a good product today? Do I look the part? Do I act the part? Am I passionate? Am I excited about what I'm going to get ready to do today? Because if you are those things, you're going to sell more product. If you're not those things, then you're just another product, just like every other salesperson out there. If you're like every other salesperson, then the reason that people are going to make a decision to buy from you has nothing to do with you anymore or your dealership anymore. It has to do with the manufacturer. And at that point, it's all about the same, folks. And I'm just telling you this, and I work with a lot of manufacturers. Everybody today makes pretty good products, so there's not a lot of differentiation between what one product can do and another product can do. Right? It's you. You're the product. And the question you have to ask yourself every morning when you come in as a professional salesperson, am I a good product? And if you're not, then you need to say, okay, well, how can I make myself a better product? Is it how I look? Is it how I act? Is it what I'm reading? Is it what I'm studying? Am I passionate about what I'm doing? So get passionate, get excited about what you're doing. You also have to understand that different types of customers buy in different ways. This is the thing when I do my sales boot camp. We spend a lot of time on this. I don't have a lot of time this morning to do it, but I want you to understand that a lot of salespeople don't understand it. Men and women buy differently. Younger people buy differently than older people. And so I tell the salespeople that I train is the first thing that I have to do is, number one, make sure I'm a good product. But then when somebody comes in, I have to say, is this a younger customer? When I say younger, are they 45 and younger, or are they 45 and older? So if they're 45 and younger, I'm going to focus on something different when I try to sell them than if they're what we would call maybe a more mature customer. Younger customers don't like to be told what to do, and this is a mistake that I see a lot of salespeople make. I have a picture up on the PowerPoint that's a swish, and everybody probably recognizes that as the Nike logo, and the theme is just do it. And when I'm doing sales training, I always challenge my salespeople to this question. I says, is Nike a great manufacturer that markets well, or a great marketing company that manufactures? And I think ultimately, we all agree that really they're a great marketing company that happens to manufacture shoes at a premium price. And so again, but the thing that I try to get my salespeople to understand is that Nike understands who their customers are. Their customers are not 80 and 90-year-old men and women who are running in malls trying to get healthy, jumping up in the air and go, look, Grandma, watch me jump. That's not who their customers are. Their customers are young people who want to be successful, who want to be athletes. And so what Nike has figured out is they've got to focus on what other people, younger people are buying, what successful people are buying. They never tell their customers to go out and buy Nike. They just say, just do it. They show pictures of Michael Jordan. They show pictures of LeBron James. They show pictures of these incredible athletes using their products. Tiger Woods as an example. And young people want to be like those people. And so that's when you're working with younger people, you have to understand that if you want to sell more to younger people, you show them what other successful young people are doing, right? And then you say, but keep in mind that may not be right for you. So I tell people, when you're selling younger people, you always want to imply that maybe it's not right for them, maybe it won't work for you. Because if you push younger people, if you try to get younger people, 45 and younger, to do something, they tend to resist. They tend to push back. It's called negative selling. So actually, rather than trying to sell you something, I'm going to show you what other people that are successful like you are buying, and then I'm going to say something like, well, maybe, but keep in mind, maybe that won't work for you. It's called negative selling. So when you're selling, if you're selling younger people the exact same way you're selling older people, 45 and older, that's costing you about half of your sales, because it's a very different selling style. We use positive selling on matures. We use negative selling on younger customers. And again, it's just simply saying, look, we've got a lot of successful farmers, we've got a lot of successful people just like you that are buying this, but keep in mind it may not be right for you. The more I tell them about successful people that are buying, and then the more I imply, but maybe it's not right for you, the more interested and excited they will be about that product in their hands. So think about that with your younger people. As we mature, we're not as interested in staying even, because younger people, because of this concept called peer pressure, want to try to keep up with what other young successful people are doing. As we mature, like I am now, I'm not interested in staying even. My primary goal is in getting ahead. And so when I'm working with mature customers, customers that are 45 and older, I spend a little time talking to them about what younger successful customers are buying, but I say, but keep in mind that may not be right for you, right? That may not be right what I think that you should do. I want to show you what other people are doing, but I know myself as I've matured, as I've gotten older, I'm not interested in even anymore. I buy things that are better quality, that are going to move me forward in some way. So as you're working with mature customers, there's an old concept called keeping up with the Joneses. And really, keeping up with the Joneses is not keeping up with the Joneses, it's trying to get ahead of the Joneses. Of course, the challenge with keeping up with the Joneses, ultimately they refinance and you can never get ahead of that family. So as you're working with people who are more mature, understand that what you're going to do is show them what other people are doing, but keep in mind that's not what I'm going to recommend for you. Because again, it's that emotion. What we're trying to do is tag into that emotion. I understand that as people get older, they're more interested in not being even. They're more interested in buying quality things. And you just think about it yourself. If you're 45 years or older, when you buy things today, you're not buying cheap. What you're looking at is saying, you know what, I would rather spend a little bit more money and have something that's better. I may not get as much of something, but I want better things. As we're younger, we try to get as much as we can for the dollars we have. So understand that. So important in selling. You have to differentiate your customers. Your men and women buy differently, and younger people buy differently than older people. It's important even in your dealership to understand what your customer base is and to make sure that your showroom is set up for that different type of customer that might be coming in. The other thing that I try to get salespeople to understand is that price does have an impact, but it's not as much as you think. One of the common things I hear amateur salespeople, younger salespeople say is, well, it's all about price, Bob. It's all about price. It is not about price. I've been selling for 30 years. I've heard that for 30 years. It's never been about price. It's never going to be about price. That's an easy escape for amateur salespeople to say, well, they didn't buy because it was about our price. They didn't buy because they didn't like you. Okay, so let's just be honest with it. If people don't buy from you, for the most part, right, the bulk of all the people didn't buy from you because, quite frankly, they didn't like you. You weren't a product that they were willing to invest in, you yourself personally. So you have to quit pushing it off on something else. Based upon studies that I've seen over the years, and this moves up and down a little bit but never fluctuates much, only 15% of the people out there buy based upon price. Only 15% of the people that come into your dealership are only interested in the lowest price. Okay, 60% of them will spend more to do business with your dealership if you can show them that you're worth more. Okay, 60% of all the people that come into your dealership that talk about price really are not talking about price. They don't see anything different, so they use price as the differentiator. But 60% of the people that come into your dealership are value buyers. They will spend more to do business with you if you show them that you're worth more. That's the mistake that a lot of salespeople make, is you go out and talk to them about the equipment you have out there. That's not what they're interested in. They've already made a decision to buy that equipment, right? They're looking for, who do I buy it from? So 60% are value buyers. You have to show them that you are, as a dealership, that you personally are worth more to do business with, and 60% of the people will spend more to do business with somebody that in their mind brings additional value. 15% won't. I get that. But 15% is a pretty small part of this whole marketplace. 25% are what we call relationship buyers, meaning they are locked into a brand. they are going to buy a brand. They're going to buy either the manufacturer's brand, they're locked into that, and you're not going to change their mind on it, or they're locked into your dealership. They have a relationship with your dealership. They're what we would call brand loyal or dealership loyal customers. They're not going to go anyplace. Price has nothing to do with it. If they like a certain color of tractor, if they like a certain type of equipment, that's what they're going to buy, right? And and they're going to buy it because of the loyalty to that brand, or to the or because of the loyalty to that dealership. They may come in, but if they say, well, I'd never buy anything but this color, I'd never buy anything because of this, right? The question is why are you in my dealership then if I don't sell that? So they're not telling you the truth. But I would tell people again, 25% of all the people that do business with your dealership are relational buyers, or they have a relationship or a loyalty to either the brand that you sell, or they have a relationship or a loyalty to the dealership itself, or somebody inside of that dealership. So do me a favor as salespeople and quit harping on price. It's not it, right? If everybody that comes in that you lose the sale to, you lose the sale because of price, it's because of you as a salesperson. It has nothing to do with the price at all. So embrace that and change yourself with that. The other thing we have to understand in sales is a basic concept, and I just did a sales success group the other day, and we were talking about this, and I wanted to bring it up in this webinar, and it's called filling the funnel. You know, the key to being successful in sales and the key to closing more sales is just having more people that you're talking to, and most salespeople that I see in dealerships are hanging out, bitching and complaining because the marketing's not working. We're not getting enough people in here. Well, dear Lord, your job as a salesperson is to generate activity. Your job as a salesperson is to create activity. My grandmother could sit around waiting for somebody to walk into the dealership to talk to them about a product, right? I don't need to pay a high-dollar salesperson to do that. Your job as a salesperson is to quit acting like you're busy and actually start creating activity yourself. So we have a thing in sales called a funnel. And in a funnel is we put activity in, and at the bottom of activity, when it's all funneled down there, we end up getting yeses. We end up getting closed sales. You've got to figure out as a salesperson, how much activity do you need to do every day, okay, to hit the sales targets that your dealership needs you to hit on a yearly basis, or on a monthly, or on a weekly basis. Most salespeople have no idea what amount of activity they need to be doing on a daily basis to hit certain sales numbers. Sales is not magic. Sales is a process. If you do the process right, you're going to get your sales numbers. You need to do $5 million in sales. You need to figure out what kind of activity do I need to have going in every day into this sales funnel that's going to net me $5 million of whole good sales at the end of the year. If it's $2 million, how much activity to get me down to this number? If you don't know that number, you need to figure that out as a salesperson. Let's talk about some basic numbers. One of the things that I hear salespeople talk about all the time is I hate to hear the word no. I tell salespeople, no's, you get paid for no's just like you get paid for yeses. In sales, you're going to have more no's than you will yeses. I just hope you understand that. Even in my ratios, if you close 40% of all the people that came into your dealership, 60% of the people still told you no. So you're always going to have more no's in sales than you have yes. You got to learn to understand that a no and a yes pays the exact same amount of money. I have a little graphic up here. You had 20 suspects come in. So think about your funnel. I got 20 suspects. Suspects are unqualified prospects. I don't know who they are. They got a pulse, and they can fog a mirror. That's all I know about them. Okay? They came in to look at equipment. They're not qualified. They're just 20 people that came in. Out of those 20, I qualified them, and I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. I qualified them to their ability to buy, and out of the 20 that have a pulse and can fog a mirror, 10 of them are actually prospects, people that could buy from me if the conditions were correct. Out of those 10, I did 5 presentations. So out of those 10, 5 of them let me do a presentation to them on my equipment, and from those 5 presentations, I ended up with 1 sale. And let's say that I got a $200 commission or a bonus for that sale. So my question to salespeople is, so how much was a yes worth? And most salespeople say, well, gosh, a yes was worth $200. And I go, no, it wasn't. A yes wasn't worth $200. How much was a no worth? Well, a no's not worth anything. Sure it is. A no and a yes are worth the exact same amount of money. If you go back and you just do your calculations, to get a $200 commission check, I had to talk to 20 suspects. So it wasn't the 20 suspects, right? Each one of those people had a value to me of $10. Everybody that I talked to, everybody that came into my dealership that had a pulse and could fog a mirror, using this calculation as your example, every one of those was worth $10 to you, right? So it wasn't one that was worth $200. It took 12 to generate $200. So each one of those people that I talked to, whether they were qualified or not, was worth $10 of commission to me. So if you say, gosh, Bob, I'd like to make $500 a day in sales, then using this formula, you need to have 50 people a day that you're either on the phone with, on the internet with, right, or walking in your door. If you use this as an example, and if I had 50 people a day I touched, whether they were interested in buying from me or not, if I touched 50 people every day some way, through a phone call to a database that I already have, or internet leads, or people walking in, I don't care how you touch them, because ratios are ratios, numbers are numbers. If I had 50 people that I touched, I would make $500 a day in bonus or commission. It's simple. Once you know your numbers and you know how to keep your funnel full, everything starts working for you. So again, as I talk to salespeople, professionals understand and know their numbers. How many contacts per day do you need? From those contacts, how many of them are qualified? From the qualified contacts, how many of them are actually people that you can turn into a presentation on? Those are all numbers you should know. My presentations to close sales, so how many presentations do I have to do to get one person to say yes? And then when I do a closed sale, how much money do I get off of that closed sale? In my example, $150. So if I wanted to find out the value of a contact for me as a salesperson, and every one of you on here, if you're salespeople, and if you're a sales manager that's on this webinar today, you need to have your people know those numbers. If they don't, they're not in sales. Okay, this would be like having a service technician not know what their efficiency is, or a parts manager not knowing what their parts inventory turns are. These are basic numbers that every salesperson and every dealer should know. If you don't know these numbers, it's easy to figure them out. And again, you can go back through this later on, or matter of fact, what I'll do is I'll make sure that I send this, our office sends this to Cole, and we can have an attachment just with these numbers on it so you have them. But closed sales to income, $150. Income to total contacts equal the value of a contact. So if I made $150 in bonus and I had 15 contacts that started this whole thing, again, each contact that I made, each touch that I made, whether they were qualified or not, at a $10 value to me. You need to know those numbers as a part of a salesperson. It's going to make your life a lot easier. The next thing you have to do is qualify people. Excuse me. Ask qualified questions that'll help make sure that you're not in front and doing a presentation to a suspect, but you're in front and doing a presentation to a prospect. Here's some qualifying questions you should ask. If somebody walks in and they're talking to you about a piece of equipment, the first question I would ask after I got to know you, just a moment, so what do you have now? What do you have now? What tractor do you have? What RTV do you have now? What more do you have now? What do you have now? That's going to tell me a little bit about what you have now is going to help me understand what you might want in the future. All right, your next question is what do you like most about it? So what do you have now? What do you like most about it? Oh, man, I love this because I've had this for 20 years and it just doesn't break down. And I mean, it's like a tank. I already know now when I'm doing a presentation. Excuse me. I already know now when I'm doing a presentation that part of my presentation is going to focus on quality and longevity and durability because they told me that's what they liked about what they had now. The next question is how long you've had it. It tells me how often that they buy or how often they cycle something through. Next question is what did you have before that? They say, oh gosh, 5 years ago I had this. Why did you buy that? It was great. It was durable. It lasted me a long time. So again, by asking qualifying questions, it helps me move these people to make sure that I've got a person in front of me I can sell. Why'd you make a change? Well, it was time for me. We got more acreage. We got this. We got that. I needed something bigger. Okay, so it tells me, why do you make changes? Do you make changes because of pain, potential pain coming up in your life, or do you make changes because something new presents you with a new opportunity? Very, very important to understand in sales that people are motivated by two things, opportunity or moving away from pain. One of the questions I like to ask in my qualification process is what is it that makes you make a decision to make a change? Is it because of potential opportunity or is it because you want to move away from some sort of potential pain in the future? Most salespeople do not ask that question, and if you don't ask that question, that's the reason you're not closing as many sales, because when you do your presentation, how you present what you're doing, whether it's toward opportunity or to move you away from pain, has a very big impact upon this person and getting them emotionally excited about doing business with you. If you change or improve anything about what you have now, what would it be? Very, very important qualifying question. What I'd really like is, I love this. I wish they made this again. I wish I could get another one of these. I would just like it to have more horsepower. I'd like to have it a bigger deck. I'd like to have it be faster. So now they're going to tell you, I want the same thing. I just want this little change in it. So even though what you have is not exactly what they have now, you can still show them how what you have is very similar to what they have, and it also gives them the things that they would love to change or improve. doesn't have to be the exact same. I can set it in my presentation and say, just like that, you've got this, you've got this, you've got this. And oh, by the way, one of the things that you said you wanted was more speed or more mowing width or more power. This is what you get with this. So I can take what you've got, I can reframe what I'm doing into that same picture, and I can move you forward on. It's going to close more sales for you. Who other than yourself would be involved in making the final decision? I can't tell you how many times as a salesperson myself, I've done a presentation to somebody who doesn't have the ability to buy. And many times I find in salespeople in dealerships, especially in my dealerships that are doing utility and compact tractors, and even the big zero-turn mowers and stuff, people that are the rural lifestyle customers, those are the people there that many times the wife will be involved in that decision, but the husband will be in. And if you don't have the wife there and you're trying to sell to the husband, you're not going to get that sale. Okay, or if the wife is there and the husband's there and you're focused all your energy and time on the husband and the wife is sitting there and you're not engaging her in the sales process, in this qualifying process, you're going to lose as a salesperson. 80% of all decisions in dealerships, when it comes to men and women in the dealerships, 80% of the decisions on buying in a dealership, if there's a man and a woman involved in the sale, 80% of them are made by the woman. And most salespeople are ignoring the woman as a part of the sales process. You do it to your own demise. That woman, many times, if she's been ignored, the husband's going to turn over to her and he's going to say, "Hon, what do you think we ought to do?" If you've ignored that woman for the last 30 minutes, the woman's going to go, "Well, I don't know. I think we ought to check around a little bit, but it's up to you." There's no man in his right mind. If the wife says, "I don't think we should, but it's up to you," no man is going to pull the trigger on that sale. They do it at their own risk. So I would just tell you again, if there's a woman involved and they're in your dealership with a husband, a man, or somebody else, 80% of the time that man is going to turn to the woman and say, "What do you think?" And they're looking for approval from the woman to make the buying decision. So make sure that you got the right people in front of you there. And then the last question I always ask, and this is going to help us when we get into the negotiation aspect of it, if you find what you're looking for at a price you're comfortable with, is this something that you would be doing in the near future? Too many salespeople don't even ask that question. So if you find what you're looking for at a price you're comfortable with, is this something you would be doing in the near future? I need to know a time frame on this. Okay? Say, no. We're waiting till next year when we've got at the end of the year, we're doing this and this and this. And if it's 6 months before they're even going to be able to have the funding for that, let's don't try to close them right now. Let's just try to keep them engaged for the next 6 months. Well, right now we're looking at buying a 20-acre little farm. We just wanted to start looking and see what was out there. Some salespeople say, "Well, when you get the land bought, come back and talk to me again." Nice job. You're going to blow that one off. I want to know what's your time frame, and if it's going to be 3 or 4 months or 4 or 5 months, I'm going to not try to oversell you on a product as much as I'm going to sell you on me, and I'm going to follow up with thank you notes and little notes and things like this. I'm going to keep you warm in the selling process, so at the point when you make that, everybody else you've talked to that's an amateur salesperson out there, I'm going to be the one that sticks out and shines. So you've got to be asking that question as a part of your qualification process. So let's talk about negotiation. So I've got a lot of things that between from what I've talked about to where we're at right now, because we got doing a presentation and we've got objections that probably came up. And I don't have time to cover all those things as a part of this presentation, but I want you to understand that if you do everything right in the back, so if you understand that you're the product and you understand that you've got to get people excited and passionate about the product, and that happens because of you more than it does your product. And you understand that younger people buy differently than mature people buy. If you understand those concepts and you qualify properly, you're going to do a great presentation, and you're going to have maybe a few objections, but nothing that you can't overcome. And ultimately, you're going to end at this point now where we can negotiate. And I will tell you that negotiation today happens in almost every situation. But most salespeople start negotiating before the customer's made a decision or a commitment to move forward. I can't tell you how many times when I hear salespeople and the customer says, "Well, can you do any better than that?" And the salesperson goes, "Well, let me go get with my manager and see." And they come back and he says, "Yeah, we can do a couple $100 more off." And I'm sitting there going like, "Dear God, you didn't even get a commitment that this person was going to move forward. You just took your price and you knocked $200 off with no commitment." And so all this person's going to do now is they're going to leave. They're going to say, "Okay, well, thanks. Let me give it some thought." And they're going to leave, and they're going to go to another dealership. They go, "Well, I was just down at ABC dealership down there, and they said they could do $200 less. What can you guys do?" And so you're the one that's screwing up your marketplace because your salespeople don't know how to negotiate. They're dropping the price without getting the commitment for the customer to move forward. You know, I hear dealerships say, "Oh gosh, our competitors, our dealers that we compete against well out there, they just drop the price, drop the price, drop the price. You're the one that's creating, right? They're doing it because they probably came into you first. You immediately dropped your price because your salesperson didn't know what they were doing. They didn't get any commitment to move forward. They just started lowering the price because that's all they know to do, right? And then the customer didn't have a commitment to move forward. There was nothing that they committed to, so they walk out the door. And as they walk out the door, again, then they go to someplace else who also has an amateur salesperson, and then now it becomes a race to the bottom, right? And that's not what you want to have in sales. So negotiating is an important thing to do, but you only do a negotiation once the customer has made a commitment to move forward with you, okay? So if a customer says, can you do better than that? I teach people in my sales boot camp to say, well, if I can, then will you do this? So if somebody says, can you knock $200 off? I would say, well, I'm not sure if I can or not, but if I can, are you in a position today to move forward? And if they go, well, no, I'm not ready to go forward again, then it doesn't matter whether I can knock $200 off or not. So when you're ready to go forward, then let's see what I can do, right? But until you're ready to move forward, it doesn't have anything to do with price anyway. If the customer says, well, can you knock $200 off? And I say, well, if I can, and I'm not saying I can, but if I can, then would you move forward? The customer goes, absolutely. If you can get this $200 figured out here, I'm in a position today where I'm willing to move forward with you. Now I can start negotiating because they've made a commitment to me verbally that if I can figure out this $200, and I'm not saying I can't, but if I can figure it out, then we can start moving forward into the sales, the closing process. And actually, the close has already taken place kind of at that point. So I want you to understand that when somebody asks me to do something or give something up, the first question that should come out of your mouth and the first question that should come out of my mouth is, if I can. If I can, and I always go, and I'm not saying I can't, but if I can, then will you do what? I'm not going to give up something unless you make a decision or you give me some sort of a commitment. It doesn't make any sense to me, right? So if I give you up something and you didn't give anything back to me, that would be what we would call a win-lose. You win, I lose. You're going to go down the street and you're just going to screw a sale up for another dealership down the street. If somebody says, no, I'm not willing to move forward yet, then my next question would be, well, what specifically would keep you from making the decision to move forward? Well, I need to get with my wife on this. Okay, well, then you didn't qualify properly because you don't have all the decision makers in place. And it happens. I get it. I've had it happen to me before. But I'm just saying there's no need of me moving my pricing down until I've got a commitment from that customer to make and to go forward into this sales process as I do it. And again, quit blaming all of your competitive dealers for lowering the price. As I tell my salespeople, you're the one that typically starts it. And because your salespeople aren't trained to negotiate properly, they're not trained to sell properly. All they are out there doing is they just throwing out opportunities and they're throwing out spiffs and stuff like this. That's not selling. We kill ourselves. In our dealerships, we kill ourselves in sales. Our competition doesn't do it to us. You know, we just screw them up too, and we screw up their pricing and their margins also. So be serious about it. If you're going to be in sales, learn how to sell, right? If you're going to call this a profession, dear Lord, take the time and learn how to do it right. Right? It's easy to do. People come in wanting to give you their money. All you have to do is learn the skills that you need and then continue to practice and to do it. So negotiation is relatively easy. The other thing I always like to do in negotiation is I don't want to give up money because money costs me money, right? So if I give you $200 off of something, the value of that $200 is $200. So I don't want to give you $200 in cash. I don't want to give you $500 in cash because cash costs me 100% of its value. So I negotiate with things other than cash. When the dealerships that we consult with, my service and my parts managers have negotiation packages already created that the salespeople can use that are involving the first service. So if you're selling a utility tractor, almost every manufacturer has a 50-hour service. That's the first service on a utility or a compact tractor, right? Go ahead and have that service package preset. So if it's $400 to do the first service on that 100-horse utility tractor, or if it's $200 to do the first service on that mower or on that RTV, whatever it is, have that package preset. Your service and your parts manager should be doing that. So when they say, hey, can you knock $200 off? You say, hey, I tell you what, I can't give you $200 in cash, but you strike me as a person that's going to take care of the equipment. The first service on this, the first 50-hour services on this, it's $300. How about I knock $200 off of your first service? So I gave them the $200. They're going to service it anyway, so we still are good on the money. They can probably roll that into the finance also as a part of it. But when I gave away $200 of service and parts, I didn't give away $200. I gave away $200 of gross sales, but I've got net profit as a part of that. If your shop is running right, you've got about a 50% gross profit in your labor dollar sales. So out of that $200, there's only about $50 of it that's actually going to really cost me time from a shop standpoint. And depending upon the product mix that you have, but you're probably running anywhere between 35 and some of my outdoor power equipment dealers are running 50% average gross profit margin on OEM parts. So you could have maybe another $60 or $70 of parts price cost that you have, but in the $200, I may have really only gave up $125 of real cash, and that's assuming that they bring it back in and service it. If they don't bring it back in and have it serviced, I didn't give up anything, and I got the sale. So make sure that when you're negotiating, that you're not negotiating with cash, that you're negotiating with something that you've pre-built, right, knowing that you're going to need to negotiate prior to that to make it all come together. I just really encourage you, your service and parts managers, if they've been on my webinars before, or if they're in our success groups, and I know a lot of you on here today are in our success groups, and I am excited to have you on here. But if you're in one of our success groups, you know I've been beating on your service and your parts managers for the last quarter about making sure that they created negotiation packages for their sales department so they can use those to negotiate with as a part of that. When it comes to closing, again, just as the last part, and closing is probably the easiest part of the whole sales process if you've done everything right. If you've done everything wrong, you're not going to close the sale anyway because you've missed all the key things. But when do you close? And that's a common question. Bob, when do you start your closing sequence? The reality of it is, folks, is you've been closing since the moment you started with the customer, you were closing them. Everything that I was doing up to that point was moving them toward this aha moment. This is what I want to do. And so when people say, when do you start closing? You start closing when people start showing buying signs. And buying signs are their head is nodding up and down like this. They're touching things, they're on things, they're sitting on things, they're engaging you with questions. Their eyebrows are up. When I do my sales boot camps, I teach about reading faces, eyes, eyebrows, smiles, lack of smiles, those types of things like that. People give you visual cues all the time when they're engaged with you, and as those cues change, then you have to adjust what you're doing. But when customers show buying signs, eyebrows are up, eyebrows are down. If eyebrows are up, buying, eyebrows are down, they're closing you out. Smile, no smile tells you their buying personality. So look for those buying signs, and you'll see them, little nods. They start touching things, on things, asking you questions and engaging you. Those are all signs that you need to quit presenting, and you need to start moving into closes. And there's a couple of closes I want to share with you real quickly here today. The first one is my favorite. It's called the assumptive close. And if I see somebody that's all of a sudden giving me all these buying signs, and I just stop and I would say, let's say I've got Dan and Mary, and I say, Dan and Mary, it seems to me like everything we've talked about is exactly what you want to do. Why don't we just go ahead and walk on into the office and let's go ahead and get the paperwork started. And I literally will say that. I'll say, Dan and Mary, it seems like everything we've talked about here is right in track with what you want. Why don't we just go ahead, let's pop inside and let's go ahead and get the paperwork started. And then I pause for a moment, I turn, and I walk away. If they follow you like dogs, it's done. If you notice that they haven't followed you, then you need to stop and turn back around and say, okay, somewhere we've missed something. But I will tell you, 60+% of the time, the assumptive close will work. Most salespeople just don't do it. Most salespeople's close is, oh, it's a powerful one. Here it goes. So what do you think? Okay, that's not a close. Okay, you've just set yourself up for a disaster. You've just set yourself up for somebody to say, well, we want to give it some thought. We want to do this. Take control of the situation. Just say, let's go ahead and let's get the paperwork started. Trust me, folks, if they're not ready to go ahead, you're not going to drag into the office. Okay, so you're not going to have anybody buy something that wasn't ready for them. But I'm telling you, 60% of the time, if you're reading your buying signs right, and you got to tune into that, but if you're reading them right, these people literally will say, okay, and they will literally walk behind you, and it's done. And you'll close sales a lot faster that way. A lot of salespeople lose sales because you had an opportunity to close it, and you missed that point, the emotion started to drop back down, and you missed it. So that's called the assumptive close. Summary close is, if they didn't follow you, for heaven's sakes, turn back around and do what we call a summary close, and just say, well, guys, Don and Mary, let's go back over again. It sounds to me like there's maybe something I left out. So I'm going to go back and recap major points. Say, guys, you told me you wanted something that was going to have that durability you've had in the past, and I think you can see where this does that for you, right? And you shake your head up and down. They go, yeah, Bob, that's right. And you also told me you wanted something that was easier to operate because Mary wants something that's got hydrostatic transmission on it instead of a manual transmission, and you can see where this would be easier for you to operate, right, Mary? And Mary goes, yeah, that's right. And so I just go back and get them to re-agree with me all the things that they said they wanted. I'm doing this little movement with my head here, and as I do that, I see them doing that again. Those are all buying signs, and I say, well, all we really need to do is go in and let's get the paperwork started. So I recap major points, and then I slide right back into that assumptive close, and I'm telling you, people, they'll just slide right in there with you. It is that simple. Don't make closing difficult. If you've done everything else right, closing is a natural part of the selling process. If you've done everything wrong, you, me, and God himself will probably have a hard time closing that sale. And they won't be happy. Then you're going to have a thing potentially called buyer's remorse come up. And we've all had that happen. And again, guilty as charged here as a salesperson. But I just want you to understand that. So we do the assumptive close first, okay? Excuse me. And then if they don't follow you, then you back around. So don't go like 300 feet away and then say, oh, gosh, they haven't followed me. Stay tuned in a little bit. They didn't follow you. You'll know it immediately. Just spin back around and say, okay, well, let's go back over some points that we talked about here, because I feel like maybe you're still not quite sure, and then go back over those points as a part of that. So that's the summary close. And the last one that I really love is a thing called reversing. And this is a thing in my sales boot camp we do a lot of work on, because it's not a tricky thing to do at all, but you have to really tune in and be tuned into listening to make the reverse go. And so let's say that I've got somebody, and let's say just for grants, I'm talking to them about a subcompact track. Okay, and so we're talking about it, and it's a Friday morning, and they're in there, and then they say, gosh, Bob, you know, this is really what I want. Let me ask you a question. I go, sure, go ahead and ask it. So if I decided to move forward with this, right, and I'm not saying I am, but if I decided to move forward with this, would there be any way that you guys can have this set up and delivered tonight, you know, Friday night? So you're sitting there going like, okay, it's 9 o'clock in the morning, and it's a subcompact, and they want a backhoe on it, and you're sitting there going, and so what you do is you're sitting there in your mind going, yeah, sure, we can have that for you. Okay, now the moment you said that, you just lost the sale. And I know that's hard to believe, but when somebody says, I want to ask you a question, and you just shut up as a salesperson, which is hard to do, but keep in mind God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use your ears more than use your mouth in sales. And they say, I want to ask you a quick question, and I'm not saying I'm ready to go forward with this, but if I were to do this, is there any way that you guys can have this delivered tonight so I can use it Saturday morning? And even though you know you can, I don't want you to say yes to that, because I want you to understand the basic premise of sales. The first person that says yes in a selling situation owns it. And most salespeople buy it back rather than having the customer buy it. So when the customer says, I'm not saying I'm ready to go forward here, but if I did, then could you? I want you to say, let me ask you a question. Would having it there so you've got it ready for you tomorrow morning, Saturday morning, is that going to work best for you? They go, yeah, I'd really like that. And then you want to go, I believe we can. Let's walk on in. Let's get the paperwork started, and I'll get with the service department and make sure that can happen. Fair enough? And I'm telling you, people, it's called a reverse. I just simply ask them back the question they ask me, and I say, so let me ask you a question. So what you're saying is that would work best for you. If we could have it ready to either deliver tonight or first thing tomorrow morning, that would work best for you. And they're going to set, because they just ask you that question, they're going to go, yeah, that's really what I want. That would really work best for me. He says, well, I'm not sure, but I think we probably can. Let's walk inside. Let's go ahead and get some paperwork started. I'll get back with the service manager or the setup department, whatever, and let's see if we can make that happen. And I always go, fair enough, and I shake my head up and down like this, and I'm telling you, people like puppy dogs, they will follow you in. It's a powerful technique. You got to practice it, though, because we tend not to listen. People give you the opportunity to reverse a lot. You really got to be tuned into it on the reverse. So again, I just want you to understand this. We covered a lot of content today, and I understand it. And as I was talking with Cole and Michael about this, it's like there's so much to do. If you're going to just talk about closing and negotiation, there's so many things. If you don't do right, there's no need of going over them, because negotiating and closing is very simple if everything that you do is right. Again, it's about making sure you got plenty of activity. That's, to me, one of the exciting things about Charter. You know, and I don't know, everybody's software is a little different, but I know Charter well, and they've got a really robust customer relation management element in their software where you can track all these leads coming in. You can track everything that's happening there. And so, again, if you've got Charter, I would encourage you, if you're not using Charter and that aspect of Charter and you've got it, you're nuts in your sales department if you're not doing it. They're so robust. They're mobile apps and things like this. Check and see if you don't use Charter, check and see if your software will do it. Some does it and some doesn't do it. If you don't, get with me and I can hook you up with some other offline kind of one-off kind of things to help you track that activity and stuff in your dealership. But again, if you've got Charter and you're not using that aspect of it, and I've got some dealers that have Charter that don't use that, and I beat them like rented mules to make sure they understand the power that's in that. So I just encourage you again to do that. It really starts with that, filling that funnel and getting that activity out there, and then qualifying people properly. And once you qualify them, it's easy to do your presentation because they're going to tell you what they need. They're going to tell you what they want. And then from that, right, then they're going to say, well, gosh, if I decided to do this, can you do this? They're going to ask you a negotiation question. And, of course, you're going to say, because you've been through my webinar now, well, if I can, then will you? And if they say yes, I would be willing to do that if you can come up and help me cross over this $500 barrier that I see. Or they go, no, I'm not ready to make a decision today, then you're going to say, well, then there's no need of us to talk about price, because obviously there's something else that's not been uncovered here that we need to talk about more. I'm never going to negotiate my price until there's been a commitment to move forward. Once you make a decision to move forward, then you and I can sit down and we can work out whatever pricing that we're going to need to work out to make it work for you. So just want you to understand that thing. And again, we're going to move on into questions now. So Michael, I'll have you pop back up. And I want to thank again, Ann, I want to thank you and the folks at Charter and your team. You've got a wonderful product. I love the dealers when I go into dealerships that have your product. You make my life easy as a consultant. So I really appreciate you sponsoring this. Michael, let's go to questions.
That's great, Bob. Thanks a lot. You covered a lot of ground there, some important topics, but I think you gave some good techniques that these guys can implement right away and make some differences in their businesses. Kind of a different approach we got here, or a question we got. What is your experience with dealerships treating internet leads as serious opportunities?
Well, I would say that every lead is a serious opportunity. You go through the same qualification process you would as somebody that just walked into your front door, Michael. I know a lot of salespeople don't. Oh, there's just people out there checking around. Well, there are people that walk through your door that are doing the same thing. So an internet lead to me, Michael, is a suspect, not a prospect. My job as a professional salesperson is to touch base with them, go through some sort of a qualification process, whether it's either through email or on a phone call or whatever. I'll qualify them to move them from suspect to prospect, and then I'll move them on into my system. So, I mean, I see a lot of salespeople go like, well, it's just an internet lead. What did you call them? Well, no, Bob, it's an internet lead. Really? It wouldn't be any different, Michael, than if somebody walked in your front door, right? Half of them are probably going to they got a pulse and they can fog a mirror, but they're not going to be interested, but you still would ignore them. And so it'd be the same thing with that. So I treat every lead as a suspect that I'm going to, as a professional salesperson, qualify, and either I'll kick them out at that point through qualification, or I'll bring them on into my sales process as moving them from a suspect into a prospect.
Okay, great. Next up, what techniques do you think work best when you deal with a customer who walks in and drops, I'm not ready to buy today, but I'm just here to kick around it? How much time do you spend with them, and how do you get them to move towards that yes?
I would still always go back to basic 101. Let's go back to qualification again. So, well, gosh, what do you have now? And they go, well, I don't have a tractor now, or I've got this now. Well, what do you like most about it? Right? If you could change or improve, I would just always go back to qualification again. So I treat, Michael, everybody as though they're a potential sell until they prove to me that they're not. If I go through the qualification process and I find out that, they really don't have anything, I'm fascinated with RTVs, power sports, mowers, I just want to touch them, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. That's what we have a showroom for. But I always go back to qualification. When I do my sales boot camp, we always go back to qualification. It'd be like, Michael, it'd be like you going into a doctor's office and you walk into the doctor's office and the doctor goes, so, what do you think you got? Okay, well, a doctor qualifies you. They go, well, what, how you feeling? How long you been feeling that way? Do you have pain? Is it a sharp pain, high pain, a sharp pain, dull pain, high pain, low pain? They qualify you because that's what pros do. So I treat everybody the exact same way in the beginning. They're all suspects. My job, regardless of what they say to me, Michael, my job is to go through a scripted set of questions that are conversational in nature. So I don't say, okay, I have 6 questions I'm going to ask you. Okay, I don't want you to sound like a salesperson. I want you to sound like an actual human being. So I would go through those questions again, and then at that point, I'll make a determination. And pretty relatively quickly, I can make a determination of whether they're a suspect or a prospect.
Sounds good. Here's an interesting question. How do you sell equipment to people with little to no money or credit? I know credit's been tightening up a little bit over in recent years, so I suspect this is something that's popping up more often.
Unless you choose to be a bank, you can't. I mean, that's part of the qualification process. So if you have no money or no way to get money, God, I still love you as a human being, but I can't sell you anything. So I mean, and I get that question asked a lot. Well, gosh, Bob, how do you sell somebody that I can't get financing on? Okay, well, you just answered your own question. You can't. Okay, so part of the qualification process is, do you have the financial ability to do this? And if you don't have some third-party finance company that's willing to take on higher risk loans or things like this, there's just really nothing you can do. And I mean, I'm not negative toward the person, but again, if part of being a qualified prospect is you have money or the ability to get the money to buy it. If you don't, I just can't go any farther with you. So there's really nothing. I mean, I wish I had some sort of magical, mystical thing you could say, but you just can't. Right? That's a part of your qualification process.
There's an abundance of product information out there these days. How do you balance, getting prospect information about a product? What's the best way, or how do you find that balance between informing them and over informing?
Well, that's a great question. So let's go back to some basics in selling. I didn't cover this, but this would be a part of if I were to do something on presentation. So let's say that a customer walks in and they have information, and customers have already been online, and they may even bring something in with them, Michael, to do it. But manufacturers spend fortunes on product brochures, and the mistake that a lot of salespeople make is we don't know exactly what a customer needs in the beginning. So Michael, let's say you came into my dealership and you said, "Gosh, Bob, I've been online and I've been looking at XYZ model tractor." Okay, just as an example. I said, "That's great." And I said, "Well, what have you learned about it?" So I'd ask him some questions about that. And I go, "Well, it sounds to me like, maybe you have some other questions. Let me walk over real quick and let me get a brochure for you." So I start off with a product brochure. Before I start talking to them about that, I go over and get the manufacturer's product brochure, which is going to be much more robust than what they would have had online. You got a rack of them sitting over there. And then I'm going to hand them a pen. I'm going to say, "Okay, let's go back. Let's go out and take a look at this. I've got a product brochure on it that covers everything. I'll walk through some things. I'll ask you some questions. You can make some notes on this." And so I used the brochure as it was actually designed to be created 100 years ago as a selling tool, not as a take-with-you tool. And so to me, the brochure, I start every sales presentation. If I were in a dealership, I would go get a brochure. Before I ever started talking to them about that particular model, if it's a specific model, I would hand them a pen or a highlighter and say, "Hey, look, here's something you can take some notes on. This is about the product. Let's walk out and look at it. Let's walk around and talk about it. I'll ask you some questions. You can ask me some questions, but this will be a great place for you to take notes on." And I'm telling you, then if they leave and they choose not to buy at that moment, they're going to leave with a brochure that they themselves, Michael, have customized for them. And if they go to another dealership, that darn brochure will be in their hand. Most salespeople, when the customer says, "Okay, do you have a brochure I can take?" Most salespeople, they go say, "Yeah, let me go get you a brochure." Well, you did it at the wrong time. All the customer wants to do now is get away from you. That's why they're asking for a brochure. That's called a buy-off in sales, right? So you didn't impress them. You didn't get them excited. They want to get out of there. They don't know how to do it, and so they ask you for a brochure because they know every salesperson will just go over and get one and say, "Now, if you have any questions, Michael, let me know." Okay, nice job there, super salesperson, right? They just walked out with a brochure. They're going to throw it away, or they're going to throw it someplace. You always start your presentation by going and getting the brochure, handing them a pen, and letting them make notes and things on that form. So then we can start working and building that. What do they need to know? Because that product brochure is going to have everything in it. And then we can really kind of start highlighting and finding those things out as we go through it.
Okay. You're pretty clear on the role of price in the process here. If a customer is being pretty prickly about the price and you try everything you can, what is your feeling on telling them to go out and get other prices and then come back if you feel like you put your best effort and your best price out there?
Well, that's a great question, and we have this happen a lot in dealerships. So let's say you have somebody that calls in, Michael, and says, "Hey, what's your best price on this model?" Well, I teach my salespeople in classes to ask the question, "Well, are you in a position today that you're wanting to go forward with it?" And they go, "Well, no, I'm not." And I go, "Well, then I can't give you my best price, but I can give you a good price." Because I won't really know what my best price is, Michael, until the day that you make a decision to buy. Because every manufacturer right now, I mean, you've got crazy stuff happening with zero down for like 900 months and 87-year front-to-back warranties. I tell salespeople there is no way as a salesperson that you could give somebody the best price not knowing when they're ready to buy, because there's too many variables right now in the marketplace. So I always just tell people when I train in my boot camp, I say, "Look, I'm going to say, look, Michael, are you ready today to buy?" And if you say, "Well, no, I'm just checking around for prices," well, I'm going to give you a good price, but I'm going to tell you up front, Michael, it's probably not going to be the best price, because I really won't be able to give you the best price until you are at that point where you're ready to buy. Then you and I, Michael, can sit down. I'll go through everything the manufacturer has for you in terms of finance and of discounts and of kickbacks, anything we can, and I'll do my absolute best to give you the best price. So when you're ready to buy, and I tell people again, I'm going to give you a good price, but I'm going to tell you right up front, it won't be the best price. And nobody out there, Michael, anybody that you go talk to can give you the best price until the day that you're ready to buy. So that's what I would do, and that's how we handle it. And so anybody that calls in on a phone call, any salesperson that's been through my boot camp, I've trained them to say that I can give you a good price, but it probably won't be the best price. But I'm willing to help you get the best price. So when you're ready to buy, go check everybody else out, and then when you're ready to buy, come back in here and let you and I sit down and see what we can do to squeeze out of the manufacturer the absolute best price we can give you. So that's what I would do.
Great. We've got a bunch of questions here. We got time for one more. Um,
Okay.
Salesmen tend to handle used versus new sales a little bit differently as far as follow up. Do you see any difference in the process between the two?
I do not. If a person buys from me, they're going to go into our exact same follow-up process as somebody that buys new. And again, this goes back to, and I keep harping on Charter here, but they're a sponsor and I love their software. But if you've got a customer relation management aspect to your software, they would go into a part of that follow-up process. They'd be followed up on exactly the same way because Michael, just because they buy something used today doesn't mean they're not going to buy something new tomorrow. And quite frankly, I probably have better margins on my used than I do on my new. So this is a customer that I want to continue to develop and to build a relationship with and to evolve with. So I never see a sale as a one-time event. In our business, in my consulting business, we have almost 2,000 dealers that we work with. So, and every one of them started with me in some way 30 years ago, and we continue to engage them and involve with them. I mean, that's why I love writing for your magazine, Michael, because you guys are attached to the same dealers that I'm attached to. So, so it's constantly evolving that relationship. So I wouldn't treat them any different. If I were a sales guy, whether you bought new from me or used from me, you're going to get the exact same experience. You're going to get a thank you note from me, handwritten thank you note. Thank you for doing business with me. If there's anything I can help you with, I'm here. Let me know. And that's what I'm going to do as a professional. So it won't matter to me whether it's new or used.
Great. Well, as I mentioned, we've got a couple more questions here, but we want to be conscious of everybody's time and their responsibilities. So we're going to wrap it up at this point. As I mentioned earlier at the front end of the presentation, we're going to send the rest of the questions home with Bob, and we will make those available along with this presentation and the audio at rurallifestyledealer.com/webinars, and you can view this and any of our past events. Keep an eye on your email as well as our eBrief email newsletter for information on when the replay is ready. On behalf of Bob and our team at Rural Lifestyle Dealer, as well as the folks at Charter Software, thanks very much for your time this morning and for joining us at the webinar. Once you leave, a short survey will pop up. Please let us know what you think of the live event. And if you have topics that you're interested in hearing more about, feel free to let us know about that. You can submit your ideas with the last question in the survey. Thanks again to Bob, and thanks for joining us today. Have a great day.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Cole.